Hello everyone. Hi, how are you? It's Anna Walker with Step Things Into Existence. Welcome to the studio table. You get to see my hands today because I'm going to show you what I've been working on the past couple of days. And I'm going to show you something that Mackay told me to get on with it. So I did, and that'll be the last little part. You'll see what I've done with my interpretation of her kit that I purchased when I was in Scotland attending one of her retreats in 2020. And it's been sitting for a long time until I found it again when I was packing up to move here to Iowa. So that'll be the last part. But I wanted to show you, I've been on kind of a rainbow kick for the past couple of days. And at first, it started out by just making some simple rainbow flat felts that I can cut up and use for projects. These were some of the bats that I've created for my class that I'm teaching at a retreat this weekend in Kansas City. And I had leftover bits, and they were at least 5 colors of the rainbow, but you get the rainbow idea. So I made some flat felts. And then I was still on a rainbow kick, so I created this little rainbow flower. And then once I got started making flowers, well, as you can see, the flowers kept coming. So this is what I have worked on the past couple of days, but also something else. So I'm going to move the flowers off. A couple of them are still drying because I worked on them this afternoon. And I'll get the flat felts out of the way. Aren't those rainbows beautiful? Got to figure out what I'm going to use these for. Will they be rainbow cups? Will they be welcome flags? I don't know. Give me your ideas. Leave me a comment. Let me know what you think I should do with the rainbow flat felts. This is one of the projects that I showed you a couple of months ago when I was getting ready to head over to Scraps KC to work on their felt loom. And this is one of the pieces that I put together a layout for, and then I ran it through their felt loom. Well, it sat and waited until I moved here to the new studio, and I wet felted this yesterday. And I loved how working with the felt loom gave me a nice stable base so that I could really work this. And I used my little textured rolling pin. That worked out beautifully for getting those fibers agitated so that they would connect even further. And I know the wet felting did a great job because I had to shave this today. If you don't believe me, ask my mom. She saw the fuzz that came off of it, because when it wet felts, you're going to get some fibers that come through. And because this fiber base that I used on the backing was basically a felted mat, partially felted, a piece that I bought from a wool fiber mill that they use to use up the little leftovers. I use this as the base to build my painting upon. Now, what's next? Well, when I saw some of these flowers on top of here, I thought, ooh, maybe I should have some 3-dimensional flowers that are in the foreground. I don't know. There will at least be stitching. There may be florals added to it, but there will at least be stitching and probably some beadwork or maybe even some lucite pieces before I frame this, because this is going to be a piece of wall art. I love the way the textures came out. I love the way the colors came out. The little bits of mohair yarn just bring out that flower, that sort of ranunculus. Is that how you say it? Ranunculus? Crazy, loopy, rosy kind of thing. But this is waiting for the next step, and the next step is hand stitching, machine stitching, and beading. So that's what's going on with that. And now for the piece de resistance. All right, so this is the kit. And like I said, I bought it when I was at Moy's Gallery in 2020. when I took my class with her. If you get a chance to take a workshop with Mackay in her home studio in Scotland, oh my gosh, do it, do it, do it. You will not regret it. I'm just sorry that I didn't get stuck there for the first part of COVID, because I got home like 3 weeks before everything shut down. But this has been sitting for a long time, and it's a little daunting. This is a painting of Moy's that she has done in the past, and she created a kit for it. And I used the kit, but I also used some extra fibers that I had on hand, because you know I have the wall of wool. So how about we wet felt this and you can see my process. So this is Moy's picture. I'm going to move it off to the side for a second. I'm going to unwrap from the plastic. Plastic will come in handy here in just a moment. This is my interpretation of the tulips and the cherries. And you can see I went for bigger tulips. I messed around with this a little bit before I started the live because the flowers are kind of splayed out. And while tulips do that sometimes, it was a little too much. So I brought the vase up a little bit more, and I brought a couple of flowers down and closer in, and I messed with some of the leaves. I'm going to mess with this one again, just to make it feel a little more natural. And I'm really happy with this. Now, what did I do different? Well, I used a matte, a pre-felt, instead of the fiber that was in the kit. I mixed my colors slightly differently with some similar colors that I had here to sort of make the colors my own. I am really interested to see how the texture is going to show up on the painting once I get it felted and dried. But I think I did kind of okay. It's hard to see with the shine, but I think I did all right. I mean, my tulips are in different places, and you know, Moy's picture has got stitching on it and such, but I think I made it my own while still, you know, keeping the brief, as it were, that Moy had for the instructions. So let's wet it down. Now, some of you have been here before when I've done this technique. Some of you haven't. Generally speaking, I would put a netting over this so that I wouldn't dislodge any of the fibers. But I'm doing things in my felting practice a little bit differently these days, and I'll show you what that is. Now, I'm using my ball brows here so that I can very gently add water right over the painting. And I've got a bucket of soapy water over here. I am just using tap water and some of my liquid Castile soap. I find that my hands feel pretty good when I'm using the Castile, and I like the different scents that I can get. The peppermint is a strong favorite, but I had an opportunity to buy some from a friend, and I wasn't picky about what scent they were. So now I'm just making sure that I've got plenty of water on here. I've got my microfiber towels right here if I need them to soak up, because I will have excess liquid here, I'm sure. But I want to make sure that I've got enough to get everything wet. So that's a good pass to start out with. I'll let the water get back in the ball brows, and I am putting the plastic back down on top. And the reason I'm doing this is so I can press that soapy water throughout the entire painting, and then I leave it in the plastic to do the first part of felting. It's a little trick that I learned when I was taking felt camp, and I believe it was Nadia's bow that showed this technique, and I have come to embrace it. Now, if I take the plastic off from the top here, there's a chance I could dislodge those fibers, but because I've got it sandwiched between the plastic, I can flip this over and I can look at the back of my painting, and I can pull the back sheet off without worrying about dislodging the front, and I can see that I have some moisture areas that need to be addressed. So anything that looks dry, I'm adding extra fibers to. Now, this is pre-felt that I bought from RH Lindsay and Company, and it works nicely as a base for felt paintings, for me anyway. Makes my layout go a whole lot faster because I can get right to laying out the design. I don't have to worry about trying to lay out undyed fiber so that I'm not going to be using all of my expensive pretty fibers to make my painting. And this pre-felt is available in yardage, which makes it nice. There are other companies that sell pre-felt. RH Lindsay and I have a relationship that goes back almost to my first year of felting, and they've treated me well, and I like to do my best to send them customers if I can. So the pre-felt is great, and it works as a nice base for felt paintings. All right, I'm going to put the plastic back over the top, and we're going to press that moisture through. And I can tell I've got moisture here. When you've been felting for a while, you start to be able to notice the different textures from wet items versus dry items, and you're able to make adjustments to help your process while you're doing it. I've got a lot of moisture here kind of in the center because I gave the vase and the bowl of cherries and the tulips some extra love because they were pretty thick as far as fiber goes. And now what I'm going to do is take my microfiber towel, and I am just trying to push away any bubbles that are in here. Why am I doing that? Well, I'm doing that so that I have a nice sealed vacuum between each layer of the plastic with my felt painting sandwiched in between. Because once I've got that vacuum, then I can start my felting process in a very different way. And that different way is by flicking. I stand up so I can do this better. Now I flick just like I would have rolled before, the same number in all four directions on both sides of the painting. So I make sure that it's nice and smooth with each turn, and then I flick some more. I love this process. I still roll, and for large pieces, I still use my rolling machine. But when it comes to getting my painting started, or getting any project started for that matter, I love this flicking in a sandwich, in a fiber painting sandwich. No air, just the soapy water. And the reason this works so well is because without any air in there, the fibers are staying exactly where I put them. And that makes it possible for me to get good agitation going as I'm working my painting. This is the fourth side. You see how I turn it a quarter turn, and then I'm doing roughly about the same amount of flicks here. And then I'm going to flip it over, and you can see our painting is still very much right there. Nothing is moving, and we're getting that lovely felting to the pre-felt stage anyway, starting. Now you want to make sure that you've got toweling or a tablecloth or something around, just in case things splash out of the ends. And you will get a little bit of soapy water splashing sometimes. I think I also took liberties with this kit in that I made it larger than what Moy had the kit set up for. And that was just based on the size of my pre-felt that I used as the backing. Smooth it out. Last set of flicks. And then we're going to check it. Okay, so we've gone all four sides on the front and on the back. I'm going to open up our package here. Our fibers are staying put. We have a nice pre-felt here. And so now I can get on with working things a little bit firmer, which means that I can get out the brush. I can even use my hands over the top of this because the fibers are stuck, well, for the most part. I might have a couple of little things down here on the cherries that I'll have to be careful with. But for that, you just cover it up with the plastic again and rub over the plastic so that I'm not dislodging anything. There are a multitude of things that you can correct with needle felting after you have done a wet felted painting. But for the most part, we have got a nice little pre-felt started here. I love the blend that I did for both the table and for the wall behind the tulips. I wanted it to look old and modeled, and I think that came through. And the cherries are going to need some special attention, so I'm making sure not to really hit them too heavily. But we have a nice pre-felt going here, and I just need to do a little bit of rolling. But for the most part, there is my version of Moy Mackay's Tulips and Cherries. Thank you for being with me tonight. Please let me know if you've got any questions at all. I am happy to answer your felting questions. And I will show you how we're going to take this to the next step next week, because there are things that we're going to do with needle felting that will outline the bowl underneath our cherries, outline our vase a little bit better here, and add some stitching to really reinforce both the tulips and the stems. So next week will be a continuation of this process, but it's rainbows and flowers here, and I hope it's rainbows and flowers for you too. And I will finish this and we will talk next week. Have a great weekend, everyone. Bye-bye.